film or series lit your fuse and made you have to tell stories on screen?
Um, Films: The Hunger, Tony Scott, Purple Rain, The Goonies, My Life as a Dog, just films like that. There was also like a film that I saw out of Mexico called Pedro Navaja, because growing up in my household, foreign films were just films, especially Latin American films or films from Spain. So I always grew up just watching stories that just felt like everyday life in such an extraordinary way. For me, a treat was like going to see films like action movies or science fiction. That was always the treat. But every day on a daily basis, like we were just watching films about everyday life in all kinds of languages as well.
Was there a great sci-fi film that influenced you?
Blade Runner, and then reading that short was really awesome. Aliens, of course. Alien was a little too terrifying. Aliens was a little more heroic, and I guess I was just a couple of years older, so I was able to tolerate it. But I mean, in the 80s, films were not rated, and our parents were much younger having kids than parents today. So this whole thing of cover your eyes, it just didn't, it was only for my mom's only, for her conscience, but we were watching it through our fingers, like super wide. And yes, I do believe that I was too young to watch certain movies, but they really marked who I am as an artist, and gave me a yearning to just always go deeper. And it may not transpire. I'm always challenging myself, but I am always going deeper in terms of the content that I'm consuming as a fan, as an audience member. Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Come on, Freddy Krueger. I think I got physically ill from watching part one. Mike Myers. Oh my God! I now that I'm older, I'm forgetting, but these were staples of my childhood and my teenage years. And also, films. There was a film, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I remember watching that movie with my grandparents, and going, oh my God, like if something ever happened like this, like what would I do? And then that last scene when she goes to say, and she calls him by his name, and he doesn't do anything, and then he just does that sound and points at her. That haunted me for years. It was like films like that.
While you were on your way up as an actress, what movie or series, or maybe a performance, did you watch that was so good it made you question if you could ever rise to that level?
Julie Kent being Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. She was a principal dancer at ABT. And I got to see her when I was very young. And it was the best Juliet I had ever seen. I was studying Romeo and Juliet in high school, and watching her was deeply moving, and she never uttered a word, but everything that she did through ballet, she was the perfect Juliet, until Claire Danes, of course, came along and did the most amazing Juliet. Performances like those, now that I'm asked these questions, it's just so funny. The young actor playing Igmar in My Life as a Dog, it just did something to me. Also because on a personal level, I had lost a parent, and I felt really lost around that time. I was 9 when my father died, and the grown-ups, as they were dealing with the shock themselves, just overlooked us children and underestimated our capacity of understanding what was going on. And I just felt constantly pulled and pushed in different directions for an undetermined amount of time. And I still have, like, just my sense memory takes me back to those moments and how traumatizing that was. But when I saw My Life as a Dog, I just felt so seen, and he was just so beautiful. So his performance still to this day just kind of stayed with me. Even the camera angles that the director chose, like how he's constantly looking up and everything just seems so big and it's always coming at him, or when you're looking down at him and nothing that he can do was ever right, that marked my life. And the Goonies, obviously, because I felt what it was like during that time of having to move from New York and going to Dominican Republic, and I didn't want to move and I didn't want to give up New York, and it just felt like my whole world was ending. It's just little things like that and I remember I just felt things very deeply, and cinema and reading and books were just this adventure that I would take every day to escape and find brand new meaning and feel hope again and forgive and be upset, and sulk in my own woes, all of those things. And I remember also my stepdad and my mom, like they were always telling me when I was like, oh my God, you're so dramatic. But in the way that it wasn't mean and it wasn't demeaning, I was probably being overly dramatic. But one day my dad was like, seriously, like, you're really dramatic. You should look into this. And that conversation became more and more serious, to the extent that then when I started pursuing this, they were all kind of like high-fiving each other, like, yes, great. She found something that she's really good at. And she turned a negative into a positive, and that was kind of interesting too.
Whether it was the success of something that you did on screen or the approval from someone whose opinion mattered to you, what first gave you the confidence that in fact you did belong here?
It's funny. It's funny because with acceptance and affirmation, you always think that if you get that one acceptance that you're going to be fine, you're going to feel seen and heard, but then after you get it, you need another, because we always keep going down this journey. But I do remember that there were moments in my career when I was picked to play Eva Rodriguez by Nicholas Heitner, when I was picked to play Neytiri by James Cameron, who was one of my idols growing up. I saw Aliens and I saw Terminator, and nothing was bigger than Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. In a time where girls were encouraged to follow in very feminine activities or acts of sports or actions that were just feminine, and they were precious, and they would put you in a pedestal. And anytime, if you were that kind of little girl that wanted to venture out into roughness, then it was negative, and you were discouraged and you were put down, not just by people that you love, but also like by your community and even your teachers and your mentors. So feeling seen by someone like James Cameron gave me a validation that I needed to hear for so many years, that it was okay to be the tomboy, that it was okay to choose pants over skirts, a wallet over a bag, because it paid off. J.J. Abrams coming at a time where I was just like, I don't want this. I don't want to start stepping into big shoes so early on. I just got my big break, and having him encourage me to do it. Sometimes when you don't see yourself and someone else sees you, it can sometimes save your life, and there were many times in which those moments whenever I was seen, like Jacques Audiard, here I am thinking that because I've done all these big action movies, that unless my husband hires me in his next movie, I'm never going to be granted the opportunity to just challenge myself in dramatic films. And Jacques Audiard calls me and he was like, I want to sit down with you. I'm doing this musical in Paris, and I just want you to do it. And he's one of my idols as well. So it's just, when you're seen, it repurposes you. I'm not saying that I depend on it on a daily basis, but I do go through my seasons of needing just solely that.
What would you say was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome to turn the projects that influenced you into your own language?
I mean, it's a list of things that I had to overcome. I had to overcome the put down of you were the best person for the part, but the director would like to go traditional, he wanted to go white. And here you are looking at yourself in the mirror. It's like, well, if I'm not traditional, then am I new? What am I? And then how the word exotic at first makes you feel special until you feel really objectified. And you realize, I don't want to be called exotic. I just want to be I just want to be considered for what I can bring to the table. And I don't want to be stopped at the door and ID'd because of the color of my skin or because of my gender. So those are obstacles that a lot of people can relate, not just people of color, when it comes to genders and things like that. The biggest obstacle lately that I'm having to overcome is myself. There's just a lot of self-doubt, and as a woman, unless you make a turn for the better internally, you're the one that gives yourself this longevity. Because your community, society has an expiration date on your value and your work, and having to work on that and kind of going, okay, this is only getting better. Saying it and then believing it is actually a good way of overcoming something like that, of you being the person that gets in your way a lot because you're filled with self-doubt.
There's a scene in Out of the Furnace that I have to say is just one of the most powerful movie moments I've seen in years. When you and Christian Bale are on that bridge, he's gotten out of jail. He is hopeful that he can rekindle this relationship with the love of his life. And then she drops the news that, in fact, it can happen. This guy she's with, they're going to have a baby. And you could just see her shutting down and him seeing a curtain close in the way that the two of you handled it, wordlessly, as I recall. When you're doing something like that, do you know in the moment that it's an exceptional scene? And what do you feel when you're doing it?
I don't know in the moment that it's an exceptional scene, because that means that I'm stepping outside of myself and observing myself. I am scared. I am anxious. I'm sad. I am trusting every single word that my director is telling me to transport me to that place that she needs to be in that moment. So what I could remember of that moment on the bridge, it was quite painful. It was quite just painful to be there, and it was scary because I'm not a method actor, and I'm working with one of the most exquisite and magnificent actors of our generation, and he's there, he's it, and so you do have to make a choice. You're at a crossroads as you're coming up those steps on the bridge, and you're like, I can either continue to be in my fucking head, or I can shut all these voices that are just creating all this noise off, and I can just listen to Scott's voice. I can just be here, and I can just understand this moment. And it was painful. It was fast. and then I saw it, and those were one of those moments in my career that I was proud. It's very difficult for me to see myself. I only see films that I'm in at the premiere, and I'll never see it again. But that scene on the bridge, I was able to tolerate myself. It was okay.
What burned in you to tell this story, The Absence of Eden, this movie that you made with your husband, Marco?
It's him. It's Marco. I just wanted to work with him. And I wanted to see him realize a dream of his since he was a child, to be a director. I work in this industry. My husband is cinema. He is art. And I work in art. My husband does art. Like, he's art. And I wanted to be one of the people that came together to help him realize this. I was not expecting the script and this story to be as powerful as it was. And I wanted the challenge of collaborating with my best friend. I think that it is doable, especially if you do it with a person like me. I understand boundaries very well. I'm very good at separating our roles, and I don't mix things. So I do consider myself to be a safe person. Whatever happens on set, I'm not going to drive home with my nostrils all flared, being totally passive aggressive. I'm going to try the best of my abilities to understand that whatever we put in there is for the sake of making it better, and it's not for the sake of breaking us down personally. And I have to say that it never happened. Watching him work, watching him sort of orchestrate his set, run his crew, and how they loved him and they called him the Flamingo. It was beautiful. I felt really proud of him.